The night sky is humanity's oldest storybook. Across 30 ancient civilizations, from the very dawn of history, people did far more than just gaze at the stars. They built their empires by them, wrote their gods into the constellations, and engineered stone calendars that still mark the seasons with perfect precision today. By the end of this journey, you will never look at a single star or an ancient ruin the same way again. How did a pyramid become a gateway to Orion's belt? Why did a culture vanish after painting a comet's destruction on their pottery? We are about to trace a celestial thread connecting builders, sailors, and kings across the globe. What do you think it means to truly read the sky? That storybook's first chapter was written not on paper, but in wet clay. In the fertile land between two rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates, the Sumerians looked up and saw something astonishingly predictable. They noticed patterns, cycles that repeated with divine precision. Their greatest obsession was not a star, but a planet. The brilliant wanderer we call Venus shimmered in the dusk and dawn skies, and to the Sumerians, it was the celestial embodiment of Inanna, their powerful goddess of love, war, and political power. They tracked its movements with a diligence that bordered on devotion, recording its appearances and disappearances on thousands of cuneiform tablets. These were not just observations, they were omens. The position of Venus could foretell the fate of a king, the success of a harvest, or the outbreak of conflict. From this practice, they began to group the fixed stars into the world's first known constellations, creating a celestial map to guide both their rulers and their farmers. Their calendar was based on the cycles of the moon, a crucial tool for knowing exactly when to plant and when to harvest in their rich river valley. This was astronomy in its most practical and spiritual form, a single discipline where science and religion were utterly inseparable. Every planet was a god, every eclipse a message, and the orderly motion of the heavens was proof of a divine plan. By meticulously charting these cycles, the Sumerians laid the entire foundation. Their star catalogues, their methods, their very way of seeing the sky would be copied, expanded, and passed down for millennia, becoming the bedrock for every astronomer who followed in the ancient world. From that Mesopotamian bedrock, the celestial thread weaves west to the banks of another life-giving river. For the ancient Egyptians, the sky was not just a map of omens, but the very engine of their existence. Their entire calendar, their agriculture, their most profound religious beliefs were set to the rhythm of the stars. Each year, just before dawn in the sweltering heat of summer, a brilliant star would pierce the horizon for the first time after a long absence. This was Sirius, the dog star, and its heliacal rising was the most anxiously awaited event in Egypt. For the Nile, the sole source of life in a desert kingdom, was about to flood. This celestial signal gave them roughly 20 days to prepare, to move livestock, to secure grain stores. The star's appearance meant the river would soon overflow its banks, depositing the rich, black silt that would fertilize their fields for the coming year. Sirius was not merely a marker, it was the divine herald of the goddess Sopdet, and its reliable cycle guaranteed the kingdom's survival. This deep connection between heaven and earth was then carved into stone for eternity. Look at the Great Pyramid of Giza, the last surviving wonder of the ancient world. Its precision is still staggering. The sides are aligned almost perfectly with the four cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west, with an error margin smaller than a fraction of a single degree. How did they achieve such accuracy over 4,500 years ago? They likely used the stars, tracking the circular motion of certain constellations around the celestial pole to find true north. But the alignment goes beyond the base. A compelling theory suggests the three pyramids of Giza are a terrestrial mirror of the three stars of Orion's belt. In Egyptian mythology, Orion was associated with Osiris, the god of death, resurrection, and the afterlife. By building these monumental tombs to reflect that specific constellation, the pharaohs were physically tying their eternal resting places to the fabric of the cosmos, ensuring their souls would ascend to join the imperishable stars. This belief in a celestial afterlife is painted across the ceilings of royal tombs. In the burial chamber of Senenmut, a high official under Queen Hatshepsut, the ceiling is a detailed chart of the northern sky. Constellations are depicted not as abstract dots, but as familiar Egyptian gods and symbols. There is a bull, a crocodile, a lion, and a man. This was not decoration, it was a functional guide. The pharaoh's soul, after its perilous journey through the underworld, would need this map to navigate the heavens. These star-clocked ceilings served as both a spiritual roadmap and a permanent astronomical record, freezing the night sky as it appeared at that moment for all of time. For the Egyptians, to know the stars was to know the path to immortality, making their astronomy an intimate, sacred dialogue between the earthbound and the eternal. While Egypt built monuments to the stars, another civilization was quietly weaving celestial order into the very streets where they lived. Far to the east, in the vast floodplains of the Indus River, a society flourished with a level of urban planning that would not be seen again for thousands of years. The cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro were marvels of the ancient world, featuring the world's first known urban sanitation systems, standardized bricks, and breathtakingly precise grid layouts. Yet, for all their sophistication, they left behind a haunting silence. Their script remains undeciphered, their voices lost to time. So, if we cannot read their words, how can we know if they too watch the sky? We must listen to what their stones are trying to tell us. Walk through the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro. The main streets run straight north to south and east to west with an accuracy that rivals modern city planning. This was not random. Aligning an entire metropolis with such precision requires a fixed, reliable reference point. On a flat river plain without magnetic compasses, what universal constant could they have used? The most logical answer is the same one used by the pyramid builders, the sun and the stars. Some researchers propose that key structures within these cities, like the Great Bath or certain large buildings, are aligned to cardinal directions determined by solar observations, perhaps marking the rising sun at the summer or winter solstice. This celestial blueprint would have served a profound practical and possibly spiritual purpose, organizing community life in harmony with the cosmic cycle. Then there is the tantalizing mystery of Dolavera. This Indus Valley city in modern-day India features a unique and monumental find, a large signboard made of 10 distinct symbols carved into white gypsum. It is one of the longest known inscriptions from the civilization, and yet its meaning is a complete enigma. One compelling theory, however, shifts the interpretation from language to image. Could these symbols represent a star chart? Some researchers see in their arrangement a possible map of constellations, a public display of celestial knowledge meant for the entire city to see. If true, this signboard would not be a mundane notice, but a civic monument to the heavens themselves, anchoring the city's identity to the cosmos. This connection between sky and society may explain their most critical achievement, survival. The Indus Valley civilization mastered water management on an epic scale, with elaborate reservoirs, canals, and drainage systems. To predict the unpredictable rhythms of the monsoon rains and the river's flood, an annual calendar was essential. Marking the solstices or tracking specific stars would have given them the advanced warning needed to manage their water reserves, direct agriculture, and protect their cities. Their astronomy, then, may have been the invisible engineering behind their visible engineering, the celestial logic that kept their clean, ordered world from collapsing into chaos. They built not towering pyramids, but a perfect star-aligned machine for living, and then vanished, leaving behind a silent, grid-patterned question mark etched into the earth. But the silent grids of the Indus Valley were not the only ancient blueprints written in light. As the Bronze Age dawned over the Mediterranean, a new kind of power arose from the sea, one whose influence would ripple through myth for millennia. On the island of Crete, the Minoans built a civilization of astonishing grace and mystery, a labyrinthine world of frescoed palaces and fearless sailors. Their mastery of the sea was legendary, and to navigate the vast, trackless expanse of the Mediterranean, they needed more than just courage, they needed the stars. While no Minoan star charts survive on papyrus, their legacy is painted on the walls and carved into the landscape itself. Walk through the reconstructed halls of the Palace of Knossos. The vibrant frescoes show leaping dolphins, graceful lilies, and serene priestesses. But look closer. Some scholars see in the repeated patterns of spirals and rosettes a potential symbolic language of the cosmos, representing the sun, the moon, or swirling galaxies. Then there is the Phaistos disk, that famous clay enigma stamped with mysterious symbols spiraling inward. While most theories focus on language, a fascinating minority view suggests it could be a ritual calendar or even a primitive astronomical calculator, its symbols marking celestial cycles important to their agricultural and religious year. The true compass of Minoan cosmology, however, may be found not in artifacts but in architecture and high places. Their palaces were not haphazard constructions. Key entrances and central courtyards at Knossos and other sites show deliberate orientations, often aligned to the rising sun at the solstices or the equinoxes. This would have transformed the palace itself into a giant calendar, with beams of light marking the most sacred days of the year as they pierced specific doorways or fell upon altars. Even more telling are the mountaintop sanctuaries, open-air altars built on the peaks overlooking the sea and the plains. These were not just places of isolation but of connection. From these high vantage points, the horizon stretched wide and clear, perfect for observing the precise points of sunrise and sunset, the movements of planets, and the rising of key stars like Sirius or the constellation we call Orion. Aligning ceremonies to these celestial events would have fused their religion directly to the rhythm of the universe, a powerful display of priestly knowledge that reinforced their authority. This deep, celestial harmony between land, sea, and sky likely seeded the very myths that later Greeks would tell about Crete. The legendary artificer Daedalus, who built the labyrinth, was a master of secrets and mechanics. Could the myth of his flight with Icarus soaring toward the sun be a distant, poetic memory of astronomical ambition, a warning about reaching too far into the realm of the celestial gods? The Minoans themselves vanished, their palaces falling to earthquake and fire, but their celestial legacy, this idea of a world ordered by cosmic cycles, sailed east across the Aegean Sea. It would find new expression in a land of rugged mountains and independent city-states, where philosophy would begin to ask the first bold, rational questions about the lights in the night sky. Across the Aegean, the celestial thread finds a very different kind of record, one not painted on palace walls but etched into bone and shell. While the Minoans watched the horizon, a dynasty on the other side of the world was writing messages to the sky itself. In the fertile plains of the Yellow River, the Shang dynasty ruled with an authority they believed came directly from heaven. Their communication with the divine was not through alignment of stone, but through the crackle of fire and the careful scrutiny of cracks. They practiced scapulomancy, the art of divination using animal bones and turtle shells. A question for the ancestors would be carved into the bone, heat applied until it cracked, and the resulting pattern interpreted as an answer from the spirit world. Thousands of these oracle bones have survived, and they are not merely religious artifacts. They are the oldest known archive of systematic astronomy in East Asia, a direct line to the moment humanity began to document the sky's most dramatic events with bureaucratic precision. Mixed in with inquiries about harvests, warfare, and the king's toothaches are stark historical notations. One bone records a simple, terrifying fact: 3 flames ate the sun, and a great star was seen in the day. Modern astronomers have identified this as a probable observation of a total solar eclipse, where the sun's corona becomes visible as flames, accompanied by a bright daytime comet. For the Shang, this was not a natural phenomenon. It was a direct celestial warning, a sign that the harmony between heaven and earth had been broken, often requiring the king to perform corrective rituals. Their entire state functioned on this principle of cosmic balance, and to maintain it, they needed a perfect calendar. The Shang developed a remarkably sophisticated lunisolar calendar, blending the cycles of the moon with the solar year. They meticulously tracked the phases of the moon and intercalated an extra month every few years to keep their agricultural and ritual seasons in sync with the sun. This was a matter of survival and sovereignty. A king who could not predict the seasons correctly would lose the mandate of heaven. Beyond tracking time, they began to map space. They identified fixed groupings of stars, asterisms that served as celestial markers. Many of these, like the Northern Dipper, which we know as the Big Dipper, would become the foundation for the elaborate system of 28 lunar mansions in later Chinese astronomy, a belt of constellations used to track the moon's monthly journey. For the Shang, every eclipse predicted, every comet logged, every star group named was an act of statecraft. It was how they listened for heaven's approval and guarded their right to rule, weaving the predictable and the unpredictable motions of the cosmos into the very fabric of their power. The silent questions of the Indus Valley find a strange echo thousands of miles away in the steaming jungles of ancient Mexico. Here, a civilization emerged so foundational that scholars call it the mother culture of Mesoamerica. The Olmecs carved their world from jade and basalt, leaving behind colossal stone heads with enigmatic Stoic expressions. But their true legacy is not just in these giant portraits, it is written in the alignment of their cities and the rhythm of a sacred count. At their great ceremonial center of La Venta, a city built on an island in a swamp, the Olmecs orchestrated a symphony of stone and sky. The entire complex is a massive cosmological diagram. Its central axis is not aligned to true north, but deliberately offset by 8 degrees west of north. This was not an error. This precise orientation likely targeted the setting point of the Pleiades star cluster, a group of stars known as the Seven Sisters, which held profound significance across Mesoamerica. Its annual disappearance and reappearance in the night sky marked a critical turning point in the agricultural and ceremonial cycle. Even more compelling is the arrangement of massive basalt columns and ceremonial mounds. Some researchers see in their layout a possible representation of the constellation we call Orion, or a mirror of the cosmic turtle, a central creature in Olmec mythology that supported the world. By walking the processional avenues of La Venta, a priest was literally walking a path through the heavens. This celestial urban planning served a divine purpose, anchoring their realm to the eternal and predictable cosmos. From this cosmic observation came their most enduring gift to later cultures, the 260-day sacred calendar known as the Tzolk'in. This was not a solar calendar tracking the seasons, but a ritual one, a count of days woven from the interlocking cycles of 13 numbers and 20-day signs. Its origin is one of archaeology's great puzzles. Why 260 days? One compelling theory points to the sky. It is remarkably close to the length of human gestation, linking the calendar to the cycle of life. It also correlates with the appearance of the sun at a certain latitude, and crucially, it meshes with the 584-day synodic cycle of Venus. The Olmecs were meticulous trackers of Venus, the bright morning and evening star. They saw it as a powerful and often dangerous deity. The 5 cycles of Venus within 8 solar years created a grand celestial harmony that they encoded into their calendar, allowing them to predict its appearances as a god returning to the sky. This knowledge is immortalized in their art. A famous jade carving known as the Kuntz axe depicts a word jaguar figure, a supernatural being whose features some scholars interpret as symbolizing the Venus god emerging from the jaws of the earth. Their astronomy was a living, breathing force dictating the timing of rituals, legitimizing the rule of kings. and providing a framework of cosmic order that would be adopted, refined, and expanded by every major civilization that followed in Mesoamerica from the Maya to the Aztec. The Olmecs did not just watch the stars, they built a world in their image, setting a celestial clock that would tick for millennia. High in the thin air of the Peruvian Andes, where condors circle and rivers carve deep valleys, a different kind of celestial engineering took root. The Chavin culture, flourishing over 3,000 years ago, constructed not a city aligned to stars, but a temple designed to become one. At Chavin de Huanta, a sprawling complex of stone plazas, terraces, and most mysteriously, a network of underground tunnels, the architecture itself was a machine for generating awe. The heart of this machine is the lanzon, a 15-foot tall shaft of carved white granite that plunges from the ceiling to the floor deep inside the temple's oldest core. Depicting a snarling deity with feline fangs and serpent hair, it was the Axis Mundi, the central pillar connecting the underworld, the human realm, and the heavens. But its power may have been activated by light. The temple's design is a masterpiece of controlled perception. Narrow ventilation shafts and canals were built with precise angles. One leading theory suggests that on the mornings of the equinoxes, a beam of sunlight would travel down these dark passages to illuminate the lanzon's face for a brief, dazzling moment. For priests and pilgrims who had journeyed through windowless, twisting corridors, the sudden reveal of the god in a shaft of celestial light would have been a transcendent, undeniable experience of divine presence. This was astronomy as theater, using the sun's predictable path as the ultimate special effect to validate spiritual authority. Their need to understand the sky, however, was born from sheer necessity. In the punishing environment of the high Andes, survival depended on reading subtle signs. The arrival of the rainy season, the behavior of animals, and most crucially, the position of the sun and stars dictated when to plant potatoes and quinoa in the valleys below. By marking the solstices, the sun's furthest points north and south, they could anticipate the return of life-giving rains and frost-free nights. The temple then served a dual purpose. It was both a cosmic calendar for managing agriculture in a land of extreme seasons and a sacred amplifier that turned astronomical knowledge into visceral, emotional power. The Chavin did not just observe the cycles, they built a house where those cycles performed miracles. While the Chavin priests orchestrated sunlight in their mountain temple, a very different kind of celestial science was being perfected in the bustling cities of Mesopotamia. The Babylonians inherited the starry legacy of the Sumerians and transformed it into something unprecedented, a rigorous mathematical science of prediction. They moved beyond seeing omens in the sky to calculating its motions with cold, hard numbers. Their greatest tool was not a stone calendar, but the clay tablet. Among the most famous of these are the Venus tablets of Amasajuka, a series of records documenting 21 years of meticulous observations of the planet Venus. These tablets note the planet's first and last appearances as a morning or evening star, its periods of disappearance, and its movements across the constellations. This was not casual stargazing, it was a systematic, long-term research project commissioned by a king. By compiling this data over generations, Babylonian scholars detected the repeating patterns in Venus's complex cycle, which lasts about 584 days. They could then predict its future appearances, turning a capricious celestial god into a calculable point of light. This mathematical approach was applied to the entire heavens. They refined the concept of the zodiac, dividing the path of the sun, moon, and planets into 12 equal signs named after constellations, a system we still recognize today. This gave them a consistent coordinate system for the sky, a celestial map with a grid, but their most stunning achievement was predicting lunar eclipses. They discovered a repeating cycle, now called the Saros cycle, which lasts about 18 years and 11 days. After one eclipse, they realized a very similar eclipse would occur one Saros cycle later. This allowed them to forecast these terrifying events when the moon turned a bloody red with remarkable accuracy. For a society that believed eclipses were direct threats to the king, this predictive power was more than academic, it was a matter of state security. Priests could perform substitute king rituals in advance to deflect the omen's danger, all because the mathematicians had crunched the numbers. This shift from observation to computation marked a revolution. The Babylonians created astronomical diaries, logging everything from planetary positions and eclipses to weather and commodity prices, seeking correlations between heaven and earth. Their work created the first true predictive mathematical astronomy, a legacy of data and method that would travel west to inspire the Greeks and, centuries later, provide a foundation for the golden age of Islamic astronomy. They proved the cosmos could be understood not just through prayer, but through the relentless, patient application of mathematics. The Babylonian clay tablets represent one path, a science of meticulous calculation. But what if the stars were not just observed or computed, but sung into existence? In the ancient forests and river plains of the Indian subcontinent, the Vedic sages composed a different kind of celestial record, one where astronomy was poetry, ritual, and divine law woven together. Their knowledge is preserved in the Vedas, a vast collection of hymns and scriptures that are among the oldest texts in any Indo-European language. Within these sacred verses, the sky is alive with deities whose movements define time itself. The Rigveda sings passionately to Ushas, the goddess of the dawn, whose daily arrival is described with breathtaking beauty, a recurring victory of light over darkness that established the fundamental unit of time, the day. It praises Surya, the sun god, who rides his chariot across the sky, his path marking the year and his light governing the rhythms of life. This was not mere mythology, it was a profound observation of cosmic order expressed through devotion. To ensure these rituals to the dawn and the sun were performed at the exact, potent moment, the Vedic priests needed precision. This necessity gave birth to the Vedanga Jyotisha, a text dating back to perhaps the 14th or 12th century before the Common Era. Its title translates to the limb of the Vedas concerning light or heavenly bodies, and it is essentially a manual for timekeeping. It provides rules for calculating the positions of the sun and moon, for tracking the solstices and equinoxes, and for reconciling the lunar and solar cycles to create a reliable calendar. It states clearly that just as the crest of a peacock and the jewel on the head of a snake are the pinnacles of their form, so is Jyotisha the crown of all the Vedanga sciences. This was practical, applied astronomy, born from the need to synchronize human activity with the divine clockwork of the heavens. From this system emerged one of India's most distinctive and enduring contributions to celestial science, the nakshatras. Imagine dividing the band of sky through which the moon travels, the ecliptic, not into 12 sun signs, but into 27 or 28 smaller constellations or asterisms. These are the lunar mansions. Each nakshatra is a distinct cluster of stars, and the moon spends roughly one day residing in each as it completes its monthly journey. This created a celestial map of extraordinary detail. Every nakshatra had its own name, associated deity, and symbolic meaning. They were used to time everything from grand royal coronations and weddings to the simple daily rituals of a household. A child's birth star, or Janma Nakshatra, determined their character and path in life, a practice that continues in Hindu astrology today, but their use was profoundly practical too. For travelers and merchants, the position of the moon against the backdrop of these fixed mansions provided a method for nighttime navigation across land and sea. The Vedic system saw the cosmos as an interconnected whole, where a hymn to the dawn, a calculation for a sacrifice, and a navigator's glance at the moon were all part of the same sacred dialogue with an ordered universe. This deep integration of the celestial into the fabric of daily life and spiritual practice created a tradition of sky watching that would evolve for millennia, influencing astronomy across Asia. That poetic, integrated vision of the cosmos met a formidable new force on the rocky shores of the Aegean Sea. The Greek mind asked a question no other civilization had framed in quite the same way. What if the lights in the night sky were not God sending messages, but physical objects obeying consistent, knowable laws? This shift from celestial myth to cosmic mechanics was a revolution in thought, and it began with a man named Thales of Miletus. He famously predicted a solar eclipse in 585 before the Common Era, an event that supposedly halted a war. Whether his prediction was based on borrowed Babylonian data or sharp observation, the impact was profound. It suggested the universe operated on a schedule accessible to human reason. His student, Anaximander, took a breathtaking leap. He proposed the Earth was not a flat disk resting on water, but a cylinder floating freely in space with the sun, moon, and stars being wheels of fire enclosed in rotating tubes. While wrong in detail, the concept was radical, a self-supporting Earth in a vast mechanical cosmos. This spirit of bold speculation reached its zenith with Aristarchus of Samos. In the 3rd century before the Common Era, he did the unthinkable. Using geometry to measure the angles between the Sun, Earth, and Moon, he concluded the Sun was vastly larger than the Earth. From this, he made a logical, staggering deduction. The immense Sun must sit at the center, with the Earth and other planets revolving around it. He proposed a heliocentric solar system nearly 2,000 years before Copernicus. His idea was largely rejected, not for religious reasons, but because it clashed with the physics of Aristotle. If the Earth moved, they argued, why don't we feel a constant wind, or why don't objects fall behind? The elegance of the idea was lost to the perceived lack of evidence. Instead, the model that endured was one of sublime complexity. It was perfected by Claudius Ptolemy in the 2nd century of the Common Era, working in the Great Library of Alexandria. His geocentric system placed the Earth motionless at the center, with the Moon, Sun, planets, and stars embedded in a series of nested, crystalline spheres that rotated with perfect circular motion. But the planets presented a problem. They would occasionally slow down, reverse course in a retrograde loop, then continue forward. To save the perfect circles, Ptolemy introduced ingenious mathematical devices, epicycles, deferents, and equants. A planet moved on a small circle, the epicycle, whose center moved on a larger circle around the Earth. This cosmic clockwork, though ultimately wrong, was a masterpiece of mathematical modeling. It could predict planetary positions with impressive accuracy for its time, and its computational power ensured its dominance for over a millennium. Yet the true observational genius of the Greeks belonged to Hipparchus. Working on the island of Rhodes, he compiled the first comprehensive star catalogue of the Western world, listing around 850 stars with their positions and brightness. He did this not out of simple curiosity, but to solve a mystery. By comparing his own observations with records from astronomers over a century earlier, he noticed something imperceptible in a single lifetime. The position of the Sun at the equinoxes was slowly shifting backward along the zodiac. He had discovered the precession of the equinoxes, a slow wobble in Earth's axis that completes one cycle every 26,000 years. This was a discovery of monumental scale, proving the cosmos itself was changing over vast, inhuman stretches of time. The Greek legacy is not a single correct model, but the very framework of inquiry. They gave us the vocabulary, planet from planetes meaning wanderer, galaxy from gala meaning milk for the Milky Way, and the names of constellations we still use today. They forged the critical link between celestial observation and terrestrial physics, demanding that any story of the heavens must also make sense here on the ground. Their gift was the audacity to look at the divine sky and see not just gods, but a puzzle waiting to be solved. The Greek pursuit of cosmic order through geometry finds a stark, silent echo in the misty landscapes of ancient Europe. While philosophers debated spheres and epicycles, the Celts were raising stones. Across Britain, Ireland, and Brittany, They erected circles, rows, and solitary menhirs that transformed the horizon into a giant, permanent observatory. Without a written word of their own to explain it, their astronomy is a language we must decipher through alignment and shadow. The most famous of these sites, Stonehenge on Salisbury Plain, is a monument built in stages over millennia by different cultures, but its final form captures a celestial ambition. Its central axis is aligned to the midsummer sunrise, so that on the summer solstice, the sun rises directly over the heel stone and casts its light into the heart of the circle. But its sophistication goes beyond the sun. The station stones, set in a rectangle within the earthwork, align to the most extreme rising and setting points of the moon during its major standstill, a cycle that takes 18.6 years to complete. This was not a simple farmer's calendar. It was a long-term project to track the complex dance of both solar and lunar cycles. For a more purely Celtic expression, we travel north to the Isle of Lewis in Scotland to the Callanish stones. Here, a central circle of tall, gneiss slabs is connected to a cruciform arrangement of stone rows, resembling a colossal Celtic cross etched into the peat. Local legend says they are petrified giants who refuse to convert to Christianity. Their true purpose, however, is written in the sky. The central avenue points roughly south, and from this vantage, the moon, during its southern major standstill, appears to skim along the horizon, almost rolling behind the distant hills as if guided by the stone avenue itself. These monuments were not passive markers, they were active instruments. A priest or elder standing at a specific stone on a specific day would see the sun or moon perform a precise, predicted drama, validating their authority and connecting the community to the rhythm of the cosmos. This deep connection to cycles is crystallized in the Coligny calendar, a fragmented bronze plaque discovered in France dating to the 2nd century of the Common Era. It is a lunisolar calendar, painstakingly reconciling moon months with the solar year over a 5-year cycle. Its most striking feature is its division of the year into 2 halves, a light, auspicious half beginning with the month Simonios, likely around our May, and a dark, ominous half beginning with Gemonios around November. This reflected the Celtic worldview, where the turning of the seasons was a battle between light and dark, growth and dormancy, life and death. The calendar marked not just time, but the quality of time, dictating when to wage war, when to hold festivals, and when to honor the ancestors. Their celestial knowledge was thus woven into the very fabric of daily life and spiritual belief. A silent, stone-bound testament to a people who read the sky not with equations, but with the land itself. South of Egypt, where the Nile carves a great bend through the desert, a kingdom of formidable power and sophistication watched the same river and the same stars. The Nubians of the kingdom of Kush built a civilization that rivaled, and at times even conquered, their northern neighbors. While they adopted Egyptian gods and the pyramid form, their celestial traditions were not mere copies. They were a unique fusion, a distinct African voice in the ancient conversation with the cosmos. The proof is etched into the landscape at Marareh, their later capital. Here, over 200 steep-sided pyramids rise from the sand, their sharp angles and narrow bases creating a skyline utterly different from the broad, smooth slopes of Giza. These are not just tombs, they are a deliberate statement of identity. Their orientation, however, speaks a universal language. Many are aligned with remarkable precision to the cardinal directions, suggesting a deep knowledge of solar or stellar observation used to find true north, just as the Egyptians did. This alignment was not for navigation, but for eternity, ensuring the deceased king's spirit had a proper pathway aligned with the cosmic order. Yet, the true heart of Kushite astronomy may lie further north at the sacred mountain of Jebel Barkal. The Nubians believed this flat-topped mesa was the dwelling place of the state god Ammon, a deity borrowed from Egypt but made uniquely their own. Carved directly into the foot of this mountain is the great temple of Ammon, a monumental complex. Archaeoastronomers studying the site have noted that the main axis of the temple is not aligned to true north, but is offset. One compelling theory suggests this orientation was designed so that the rays of the rising sun on the winter solstice would penetrate deep into the temple's inner sanctuary, illuminating the statue of the god within. This would transform the temple into a colossal solar instrument, using the sun's most southerly sunrise to enact a divine spectacle of light and rebirth, tying the authority of the Kushite king directly to Ammon's celestial power. This synthesis is key. The Kushites worshipped Egyptian gods, but they observed the sky from a different latitude, under a slightly different canopy of stars. Their experience of the Nile's flood cycle, governed by distant rains in the Ethiopian highlands, differed from Egypt's reliance on Sirius. This likely led them to emphasize different celestial markers or to interpret familiar constellations through a Nubian lens, integrating older, indigenous African sky lore with the imported Egyptian system. Their astronomy was a tool of political and spiritual sovereignty, a way to claim their own divine mandate while standing in the long shadow of Egypt's grandeur. By aligning their pyramids and temples to the heavens, they were asserting their place not just on the Nile, but within the cosmos itself, proving that the celestial thread was woven with many different colors along the great river's course. This celestial dialogue between land, law, and sky finds a powerful voice in the sacred texts of the ancient Hebrews. Their cosmology was not written on clay tablets or aligned in stone, but woven into the very fabric of their history and religious law, most profoundly in the Hebrew Bible. The opening chapter of Genesis presents a grand, ordered narrative of creation where the celestial bodies are given a specific and somewhat humble purpose. The sun and moon are created on the fourth day not as deities to be worshipped, but as functional objects, great lights to govern the day and the night, to separate light from darkness, and to serve as signs for seasons, for days, and for years. This demotion of the sun and moon from divine status to created instruments was a radical theological statement, establishing a universe governed by a single, transcendent God whose laws were reflected in the predictable motions of the heavens. This order, however, was sometimes shown to bend to divine will in dramatic stories that have sparked debate for millennia. One of the most famous is the account in the book of Joshua, where Joshua, leading the Israelites in battle, commands the sun and moon to stand still over the valleys of Gibeon and Ajalon. The text states the sun stopped in the middle of the sky and delayed going down for about a full day. While often interpreted as a miraculous suspension of Earth's rotation, other scholarly readings suggest it could describe a celestial omen, like a prolonged solar halo or an eclipse that darkened the battlefield, perceived as the sun waiting to set. Regardless of interpretation, the story underscores a core belief: the creator of the cosmic order could also command it. Prophecy, too, was linked to the stars. In the book of Numbers, the non-Israelite prophet Balaam delivers an oracle declaring, "A star will come out of Jacob, a scepter will rise out of Israel." This was understood as a messianic prophecy, linking the arrival of a future king to the appearance of a star, a concept that would resonate profoundly in later traditions. Far more than dramatic stories, this relationship with the sky was codified into daily life through sacred time. The Hebrew calendar was and remains fundamentally lunar. Each month began with the sighting of the new crescent moon, a moment declared by witnesses to the High Court. This lunar cycle directly governed all religious observance. The most important festival, Passover, is commanded to begin on the 15th day of the month of Nisan, which is the first full moon after the spring equinox. This timing ensured the holiday coincided with the full moon, providing light for nighttime ceremonies and pilgrimages. But a purely lunar calendar of about 354 days quickly falls out of sync with the solar year and the agricultural seasons it marks. To solve this, the Hebrews adopted and formalized a brilliant innovation, the Metonic cycle. Named for the Greek astronomer Meton, who described it in the 5th century before the Common Era, This 19-year cycle observes that 235 lunar months almost exactly equal 19 solar years. By inserting an extra intercalary month 7 times within that 19-year period, the lunar calendar could be perfectly reconciled with the solar seasons. This fixed mathematical rule transformed timekeeping from an observational task into a calculable science, ensuring that Passover would always fall in the spring and the autumn harvest festival of Sukkot would always occur in the autumn, generation after generation. For the ancient Hebrews, the heavens were the clock of God, their steady motions a testament to divine faithfulness, and their careful observation a sacred duty that structured worship, history, and the promise of the future. A king's calendar and a sailor's compass serve very different masters. While empires built monuments to mark the seasons, the Phoenicians needed something far more immediate, a way to find a path across a trackless, star-reflecting sea. Their cities, like Tyre and Sidon, were not grand inland capitals but bustling ports perched on the Levantine coast, and their wealth came from the daring trade routes they pioneered. To sail beyond the sight of land, especially at night or under overcast skies, they had to become masters of the one fixed point in the turning sky, the North Star. For them, Polaris was not a deity but a literal lifeline, the immovable pivot around which their entire world of commerce revolved. Unlike other stars that rise and set, Polaris holds nearly stationary in the northern sky, its altitude above the horizon directly corresponding to the observer's latitude. A Phoenician captain sailing from his home port would know precisely how high Polaris should appear in the sky. As he ventured westward, he would watch that altitude decrease. If he needed to return home, his task was simple: sail north or south until Polaris returned to its familiar height, then turn east. This gave them a reliable method for maintaining a consistent east-west course, a celestial parallel that kept them from getting hopelessly lost. But their knowledge went beyond a single star. They learned the patterns of the entire night sky, using constellations as seasonal markers. The rising of certain stars after sunset would tell them the time of year, crucial for knowing when to attempt open water crossings or when to expect favorable winds. This was astronomy stripped of all ceremony, a brutally practical science of survival where a mistake in reading the heavens could mean a ship and its crew vanished forever. Their legendary voyages, possibly reaching as far as Britain for tin and even circumnavigating Africa, would have been impossible without this deep stellar literacy. It is almost certain they passed this hard-won knowledge to the Greeks, who initially were poor sailors compared to the Phoenician masters of the sea. The Greek word for the star group we call the Big Dipper is He-like, meaning the turning one, but they also knew it as Phoin-like, a direct tribute to the Phoenician sailors who used it so expertly. While we have no surviving Phoenician star charts, their legacy suggests the use of simple tools. A length of string with a weight, a plumb line, could be held at arm's length to measure the angular height of Polaris above the horizon. Even a fist held upright with the width of a knuckle representing a rough unit of angular measure could provide a crude but effective way to track their position. They were the engineers of celestial navigation, transforming the majestic, untouchable cosmos into a functional dashboard for their ships, proving that the stars could build an empire not of stone, but of trade routes and whispered secrets across the dark water. The practical navigation of the Phoenicians required a stable sky, a fixed point to guide their ships, but for an empire that stretched from the Nile to the Indus River, governing such vast diversity demanded a more profound cosmic order. The Achaemenid Persians, builders of the legendary royal road and masters of administration, understood that to rule the earth they must first comprehend the heavens. Under kings like Darius the Great, astronomy was not merely studied, it was officially sponsored. The Persians became the great patrons and preservers of celestial science, establishing observatories and funding scholars whose work would create a vital bridge between the ancient world and the future. They inherited the immense astronomical archives of the Babylonians, those meticulous clay tablets filled with centuries of eclipse records and planetary data. But they did not just store this knowledge in dusty libraries. They actively translated, synthesized, and built upon it. One of their most significant contributions was the development of early astronomical handbooks known as Zij. These were comprehensive tables that provided all the necessary data for calculating planetary positions, eclipses, and the movements of the sun and moon. A legendary example, though known only from later references, was the Zij-i-Shahyar, or the Royal Tables. This work would have been a crowning achievement of imperial scholarship, compiling observations and mathematical models to create a practical tool for timekeeping and celestial prediction for the entire empire. This work of synthesis fed directly into their most enduring daily creation, a remarkably sophisticated solar calendar. Prior calendars in the region, like the Babylonian one, were lunisolar, constantly requiring intercalation to stay in sync with the seasons. The Persian calendar, however, was a pure solar calendar of 365 days. It was divided into 12 months of exactly 30 days each, with an additional 5 days added at the end of the year, days considered outside the regular month cycle and often seen as spiritually significant. This structure was elegant and practical, aligning civil and religious life firmly with the solar year and the agricultural cycle it governed. For a bureaucracy that collected taxes and coordinated festivals across continents, such a reliable, standardized timekeeping system was an instrument of power as crucial as the army. Yet for the Persians following the Zoroastrian faith, astronomy was far more than administrative math. The stars were sacred. The cosmos was a battlefield between the forces of truth, order, and light, known as Ashar, and the forces of falsehood and chaos, Drudge. The celestial bodies, in their flawless, predictable motions, were the purest physical manifestations of Ashar. To study the stars was to witness the divine plan of Ahura Mazda, the wise Lord, unfolding in real time. This spiritual framework elevated astrology from mere fortune-telling into a sophisticated science of cosmic alignment. The position of the planets and stars at a king's coronation or the founding of a city was not just an omen. It was a reading of the celestial balance of power at that moment, a guide for ensuring human actions reinforced cosmic order. Persian astrologers, or magi, were thus both priests and scientists, using the mathematical tools of the Zij tables to cast horoscopes and determine auspicious times for important events. In this way, the Persian Empire performed a monumental service to history. They acted as the world's first great academic funding body and library system, taking the raw data of Babylon, filtering it through their own precise solar calendar, and infusing it with a philosophical and religious depth that saw the stars as soldiers in a sacred war for truth. This rich fusion of observation, calculation, and theology would not gather dust. It was carried east and west along the Silk Roads, preserved and enriched, waiting for a new age of inquiry to unlock its deeper secrets. That Persian fusion of math and cosmic order would find its ultimate expression in the humid jungles of the Yucatan. The Maya did not just watch the sky, they built a civilization that ran on its schedule, a society where time itself was a deity to be worshipped and appeased. Their celestial obsession was born from a terrifying necessity, the belief that the gods in the heavens required precise, timely rituals to keep the universe from collapsing. This pressure forged an astronomy of breathtaking mathematical precision, a science encoded in their sacred books, the codices. The most famous of these, the Dresden Codex, is not a historical narrative but a manual for cosmic maintenance. Its pages are filled with intricate tables of numbers and glyphs, a celestial almanac for priests. One of its most stunning sections is the Venus table. The Maya tracked the planet Venus, which they saw as a dangerous war god named Kukulkan, with obsessive accuracy. They calculated its 584-day synodic cycle to a precision of just 1 day in 500 years. This was not for idle curiosity. The table predicts the planet's first appearances as the morning or evening star for a span of over 100 years. Why such long-term forecasting? Because the return of Venus was an omen of potential disaster, a time when war might be favorable or when the gods might bring strife. By knowing the exact date, priests could perform the correct, preemptive rituals to deflect its malevolent influence. The Codex contains similar eclipse tables, using the cycles of the moon to predict when the sun or moon might be eaten by the dark forces of the underworld. This predictive power was the ultimate source of priestly authority, turning the terrifying chaos of the cosmos into a scheduled series of manageable divine appointments. This celestial mathematics was then translated into stone on a monumental scale. At Chichen Itza, the pyramid known as El Castillo is a giant four-sided calendar. Each of its 4 stairways has 91 steps, with a shared platform at the top that totals 365, one step for each day of the solar year. But its true magic is reserved for the equinoxes. As the sun sets on March 21st and September 21st, the angle of the sunlight casts a series of triangular shadows along the balustrade of the northern staircase. These shadows connect with stone serpent heads at the base, creating the undulating, luminous body of a giant snake slithering down from the heavens to earth. This is the feathered serpent god Kukulkan descending from the sky. The pyramid is not merely aligned to the sun. It is an instrument designed to make the sun perform a specific, awe-inspiring piece of theater twice a year, uniting the community in a visible, undeniable demonstration of cosmic order and royal power. Every major Maya city was a machine for tracking time, with building alignments marking solstice sunrises or the zenith passages of the sun when it casts no shadow at noon. Their world was a grand, ticking clock, and their survival depended on keeping it wound. The Maya's celestial clockwork was a monument to prediction, a society that believed it could schedule divine appeasement. But what happens when the sky delivers an event so sudden, so violent, it cannot be predicted, only remembered in terror? On the arid north coast of Peru, the Moche culture faced exactly that. Masters of metallurgy and ceramic art, they flourished for centuries, building vast adobe pyramid complexes known as huacas. The 2 greatest of these, the Huaca del Sol and the Huaca de la Luna, dominate the landscape. While the Huaca del Sol, the larger of the 2, was likely an administrative center, the Huaca de la Luna reveals a darker, more celestial purpose. Its walls are layered like a gruesome onion, with each generation plastering over the old temple and building a new one atop it. Archaeologists peeling back these layers have found vivid murals depicting a stern, fanged deity now called the Decapitator God. The alignment of this temple is critical. Research suggests its main platform was oriented to catch the first rays of the rising sun during the December solstice, the southern hemisphere's summer. This would have bathed the god's image in a dramatic, seasonal light, a spectacle connecting the sun's peak power to the authority of the priests who performed rituals within. But the Moche left a far more enigmatic record than alignments, one painted on their finest pottery. A recurring, bizarre theme in their art is known as the revolt of the objects. In these scenes, the natural order is completely inverted. Animated weapons like clubs and spears attack human warriors. Fish are seen chasing fishermen. Storage jars grow legs and march away. This is not whimsy, it is chaos, the complete breakdown of the cosmic and social order. For a culture whose survival depended on the predictable cycles of ocean currents and river floods, such imagery represents ultimate catastrophe. What could have inspired it? Many scholars point to the sky. The most compelling theory suggests the Moche witnessed and recorded a devastating astronomical event, perhaps a brilliant, daylight visible supernova or a terrifyingly close comet with a sprawling tail. Such an event would have been utterly outside their experience, a violation of the stable heavens. The light could have been so intense it cast shadows at night, and if a comet, it might have been accompanied by sonic booms or even meteorite impact. In the aftermath of such a skyborne trauma, the world itself would have felt turned upside down. The reliable sun and stars, the very framework of order, had just staged a violent rebellion. It is no stretch to think this trauma was processed into myth and then into art, a way to explain why the gods had allowed the weapons of the cosmos to turn against humanity. This celestial panic may have had dire real-world consequences. Some archaeologists see a possible link between this period of artistic obsession with cosmic chaos and evidence of severe drought and social upheaval in the March realm. If a comet's dust veil or other atmospheric effects triggered climate change, the double blow, a terrifying sky followed by failing crops, could have shattered the priestly authority that claimed to control the natural world. The March story is a stark reminder that ancient astronomy was not always about calm prediction. Sometimes it was about surviving the sky's sudden, inexplicable fury and trying to make sense of the chaos by painting it on a pot, a permanent record of the day the heavens revolted. The sky's sudden fury could shatter a civilization, but its gentle, predictable rhythms could also nurture one from the very beginning. While the March painted celestial chaos on a chain of volcanic islands far across the Pacific, the ancient Japanese were weaving the sun, moon, and stars into the origin story of their world. Their earliest astronomy is inseparable from mythology, a sacred narrative where the heavens were not just observed, but were the literal ancestors of the people and the land itself. This is preserved in Japan's oldest chronicles, the Kojiki and the Nihon Shoki, compiled in the 8th century but containing myths passed down for millennia. At the heart of these stories is Amaterasu Omikami, the radiant sun goddess, born from the left eye of the creator deity Izanagi. She is not a distant ball of fire, but a divine personality whose light sustains the world. In the most famous myth, after a conflict with her stormy brother Susanoo, Amaterasu retreats into a cave, plunging the world into darkness. The other gods must lure her out with a mirror and a joyous dance, restoring light and order. This story is far more than a simple tale. It is a profound cosmological drama about the necessity of the sun, the terror of its absence, and the rituals required to ensure its return, echoing the very real fear of winter or eclipse. But long before these stories were written down, the first inhabitants of the islands were already marking the sky's passage. During the Jomon period, a culture lasting over 10,000 years, people created intricate clay tablets known as dogu and patterned pottery. Some of these artifacts bear mysterious dot patterns and curved lines. While their meaning is debated, a number of archaeologists propose that certain arrangements could represent star clusters or the phases of the moon. A clay fragment found in the Aomori prefecture, for instance, shows a series of small circular impressions alongside crescent shapes, a possible record of a lunar cycle. For a hunter-gatherer society deeply attuned to the seasons for foraging and fishing, tracking the moon's phases would have been crucial for timing gatherings and understanding tidal patterns. This suggests a practical, embedded astronomy where celestial observation was part of the daily rhythm of survival. This relationship with the sky transformed dramatically with the arrival of wet rice cultivation during the Yayoi period, beginning around 300 years before the Common Era. Rice farming demanded precise timing, planting in spring and harvesting in autumn. To manage this, the Yayoi people adopted the lunisolar calendar from the Chinese mainland, but they did not simply copy it. They adapted it fiercely to their own environment and needs. This imported calendar provided the structured framework of months and intercalary days needed to keep the agricultural year aligned with the seasons. However, the rituals that populated this calendar, the festivals marking planting and harvest, became thoroughly Japanese, evolving into what we now recognize as early Shinto practices. The sun goddess Amaterasu became the divine guardian of the rice harvest, her light directly linked to the fertility of the paddies. The moon, too, was vital, its phases governing water management for the flooded fields. This fusion created a unique spiritual ecology where natural phenomena, celestial bodies, and agricultural cycles were seen as interconnected expressions of a sacred, animated world called Kami. Mountains, rivers, trees, and the sun itself all housed Kami or spirits. Therefore, to observe the sun's solstice point or the moon's fullness was to commune with a deity, and to perform a ritual at the correct celestial moment was to participate directly in maintaining the harmony of all things. The ancient Japanese did not build stone observatories. They built a worldview where the sky lived in the rice paddies and the gods danced in the sunlight on the water. Deep within the rose-red canyons of southern Jordan, a city was carved not just from rock but from the precise movements of the sun. The Nabateans, the master traders who built Petra, transformed a barren desert into a nexus of wealth by controlling the incense routes. Their architectural genius is visible in the iconic treasury and the soaring Ad-Dar monastery, but look closer and you will see these facades are more than decoration. They are sophisticated solar instruments. Researchers studying the Ad-Dar have noted a remarkable phenomenon. The massive, isolated monument is oriented so that on the day of the winter solstice, the setting sun aligns perfectly with the main doorway. As the sun dips below the horizon, its final rays are funneled directly into the inner sanctum, a sacred chamber known as the biclinium. For a brief, dazzling moment, the heart of the mountain temple is set ablaze with golden light. This was no accident of geology. It was a deliberate alignment, a way to mark the sun's lowest point in its annual journey and signal the symbolic rebirth of light, a potent moment in a desert culture where the sun governed life and death. Similar solar alignments are suspected at the treasury, Petra's most famous facade, where sunlight may have been designed to illuminate the statue of a goddess in a central niche on specific significant days of the year. These architectural feats required an intimate, long-term knowledge of the sun's path, a science honed not just for ceremony but for sheer survival. Their empire was built on the backs of camel caravans crossing hundreds of miles of trackless desert. To guide these precious shipments of frankincense and myrrh from southern Arabia to Mediterranean ports, the Nabateans had to become expert celestial navigators. By night, they would have relied on the fixed patterns of stars, much like the Phoenicians before them, using constellations to maintain their north-south bearings across the dunes. By day, the sun was their compass and their clock. Understanding its shifting position throughout the year would have been critical for planning the timing of these arduous journeys, avoiding the fiercest summer heat, and knowing when to find seasonal water sources. Their astronomical knowledge became a trade secret as valuable as the spices they carried. This practical science was filtered through a rich cultural lens. The Nabateans existed at a crossroads, absorbing influences from their Egyptian neighbors to the west, the Hellenistic kingdoms to the north, and the Bedouin tribes of the Arabian Peninsula. This fusion created a unique spiritual tapestry. They worshipped chief gods like Dashara, often associated with mountains and the sun, and Al-Uzza, a powerful goddess linked to the planet Venus. It is highly likely they syncretized these Arabian deities with the astral traditions of others, perhaps viewing Venus through both an Egyptian lens as a morning star and a Babylonian one as a harbinger. While no Nabatean star charts have survived, their tombs and temples, oriented with such solar precision, speak volumes. They did not leave behind clay tablets or complex codices. Instead, they left a city where the sun itself performs an annual ritual, lighting the way into silent, rock-cut chambers, a permanent testament to a people who used the sky to conquer the desert and write their legacy in stone and light. The desert sun writes its own calendar across the sandstone cliffs of the American Southwest. Here, the ancestral Puebloans, sometimes called the Anasazi, engineered a celestial dialogue with the sky so precise it still marks the seasons centuries after their cities were abandoned. In the vast, silent expanse of Choco Canyon, a lone butte named Fajoda Butte rises from the canyon floor. Near its summit, 3 large stone slabs have fallen against the cliff face, creating narrow slits. Behind them, ancient artists carved 2 spirals into the rock wall. For most of the year, these petroglyphs sit in shadow, but on the summer solstice, a dagger of sunlight slices directly through the center of the larger spiral. On the winter solstice, 2 daggers of light perfectly bracket the same spiral, and during the equinoxes, a single shaft of light bisects the smaller spiral beside it. This is the sun dagger, a celestial timepiece of staggering elegance. It was not a passive observation, but an active, engineered instrument. The positioning of those fallen slabs was likely adjusted, perhaps with smaller stones, to fine-tune the light's path, transforming a natural rockfall into a calibrated solar observatory. In a landscape where the margin between a bountiful harvest and starvation was measured in days, knowing the exact moment of the solstice was not philosophical, it was vital. It told them when the sun had reached its turning point, when the long, hot days would begin to shorten, or when the weak winter sun would start its return, signaling the time to prepare for planting. This celestial precision was woven into the very architecture of their world. At the great house of Pueblo Bonito in Choco Canyon, the massive, D-shaped complex is aligned along a north-south axis with an accuracy rivaling the pyramids of Giza. Its walls and doorways are positioned to channel sunlight into specific rooms on key days. But perhaps the most sacred astronomical instruments were the kivas, the circular, subterranean chambers used for ceremonies and community gatherings. The alignment of a kiva's entrance, its ventilation shaft, and a small, symbolic window called a sipapu, representing the portal from which ancestors emerged into this world, often created a precise interaction with the sun. On the morning of the summer solstice, a beam of sunlight might pierce the entrance and crawl across the floor to illuminate the sipapu, physically connecting the sun's peak power to the Puebloan story of creation and emergence. This was astronomy as a lived, spiritual experience where the entire community, gathered in the cool, dark earth, could witness the cosmos honoring their sacred space. Their understanding extended beyond the sun to the more subtle, complex dance of the moon. At Chimney Rock in Colorado, a Puebloan great house was constructed on a perilous ridge between 2 towering rock pinnacles. From this vantage, every 18.6 years during the lunar major standstill, the moon would rise directly between the 2 stone spires, framed as if in a giant natural gate. Building a significant structure at such a remote and difficult location solely to capture this rare lunar event speaks of its profound importance. Tracking this long cycle required generations of careful observation and oral transmission of knowledge. In the arid, punishing climate of the Southwest, where rainfall was unpredictable, the moon's cycles may have been tied to more subtle ecological calendars, perhaps related to the flowering of certain plants or the behavior of animals, providing a secondary, celestial guide for survival when the sun's primary calendar was not enough. Their great houses at Choco, their cliff dwellings at Mesa Verde, were not just shelters from the elements, they were shelters within time itself, structures designed to catch and hold specific moments of celestial light, anchoring their society to the reliable rhythm of a seemingly chaotic universe. These high desert solstices, marked by light and stone, find a parallel in the lush highlands of another continent. In the kingdom of Axum, the very ground seems to reach for the heavens. Here, towering stone stelae pierce the sky, monuments of such scale and precision they rival the obelisks of Egypt. The largest of these, the Great Stele, now lies fallen and broken, but in its prime it stood over 100 feet tall, a single piece of granite carved to resemble a multi-story building. While their primary purpose was likely as funerary markers for royalty, their placement whispers of a deeper celestial intention. Archaeoastronomers surveying the main stellar field in Axum have noted that the fallen giants are not arranged randomly. Their long axes appear to follow a general alignment, not with true north, but along a northeast-southwest orientation. This specific alignment does not correspond to the sunrise or sunset on a major solstice, leading to intriguing questions. Could it point toward the rising of a significant star or constellation important to Aksumite cosmology, perhaps Sirius, whose heliacal rising was so crucial to their Egyptian neighbors? Or does it mirror the alignment of nearby structures like the Taka Mariam Palace, whose massive foundation also shares this curious orientation? These stones were more than tombstones, they were permanent fixtures in a landscape designed to converse with the cosmos. This conversation took a profound turn in the 4th century when King Azana converted to Christianity, making Aksum one of the world's first Christian kingdoms. This was not a simple erasure of the old ways, but a remarkable synthesis. The Aksumites had long been influenced by the Sabaeans from across the Red Sea, who themselves were avid star worshippers, and by indigenous Cushitic beliefs that venerated celestial bodies. The new Christian faith did not discard this celestial awareness, it redirected it. The sun was no longer a deity to be worshipped, but a creation of the one God, a symbol of divine light and order. Churches were often built on sites previously considered sacred, and their east-west orientation, facing the rising sun toward Jerusalem, layered a new Christian meaning onto an ancient practice of solar alignment. The stars, once seen as divine beings, were reinterpreted as part of God's magnificent creation, their predictable movements proof of his orderly power. This fusion is beautifully preserved in the unique Ethiopian calendar, a living artifact of this cultural blend. It is a solar calendar, but it retains ancient elements. Most remarkably, it features a 13th month. This is not an extra month in the way we think of leap years, but a short 5 or 6 day period called Pagium, which means forgotten days in Jazz. These are the days needed to reconcile the solar year with the 12 months of 30 days each. During Pagium, traditional beliefs held that the natural and spiritual order was in flux, a time when the usual rules were suspended. This concept echoes much older, pre-Christian ideas about transitional periods being times of chaos or spiritual significance, directly tied to the completion of a celestial cycle. The calendar itself is a testament to meticulous long-term solar observation, necessary to pinpoint the exact moment of the autumnal equinox, which marks the Ethiopian New Year or Enkutatsh, the festival of the gift of jewels. This celebration, coinciding with the end of the rainy season and the return of brilliant sunshine, perfectly embodies the Aksumite synthesis, Christian in its later adoption, yet deeply rooted in the joyous observation of the sun's life-giving return, a celestial event celebrated long before the first church was ever built. The stelae stand as silent sentinels to this history, stones that once may have pointed to stars now surrounded by churches that point to heaven, all governed by a calendar that remembers the forgotten days between one solar year and the next. Gold horses and stags leap across the dark earth, frozen in eternal motion. The Scythians, masters of the endless Eurasian steppe, built no pyramids or temples. Their monuments were the burial mounds that still dot the landscape, the kurgans, and within them they left a language of metal. Their breathtaking goldwork, discovered in treasures from Ukraine to Siberia, is a riot of stylized animals locked in combat or curled in elegant repose. This so-called animal-style art is more than decoration. It is a potential star map rendered in precious metal. Look closely at a famous piece like the golden stag plaque from the Kostromskaya kurgan. The creature's antlers are not a realistic depiction, but an elaborate, looping cascade of tendrils, each ending in a bird's head. Could this intricate branching represent not just a stag, but the sprawling, dendritic form of a specific constellation, perhaps the one we call Ursa Major, the Great Bear, whose own shape has been imagined as an animal across countless cultures? The sky, for a people who lived in the saddle under an infinite dome of stars, was their most constant companion and their most vital tool. navigation across the featureless sea of grass required a stellar compass. Without roads, rivers, or landmarks, the Scythian horseman oriented himself by the fixed pivot of the North Star and the familiar patterns wheeling around it. The position of certain constellations above the horizon would tell him the time of night and the season of the year, crucial knowledge for knowing when to move herds to new pastures, when to expect the brutal winter, or when to gather for the great annual assemblies described by the Greek historian Herodotus. This intimate, practical relationship with the cosmos bled into their spiritual world. Herodotus records that the Scythians worshipped a primary deity simply as the god of the sky or Zeus, using the Greek equivalent. They made no idols for this god, offering sacrifices to him on hilltops, the highest places closest to his realm. Their most sacred oath was sworn by the king's hearth, but also by the masters of the Scythians, likely meaning the celestial powers. This sky-focused belief system, where the divine was literally overhead, perfectly suited a nomadic existence. Their temples were not buildings, but the open sky itself, their rituals timed by the movements of the sun, moon, and stars across the vast, unbroken horizon. The gold animals sewn onto their clothing and horse trappings, then, may have served a dual purpose. They were symbols of power, fertility, and the wild spirit of the steppe, but they could also have been talismanic representations of celestial protectors, wearable constellations that connected the wearer to the guiding powers of the night. In a life defined by constant movement, the stars were the only permanent architecture, and the Scythians clothed themselves in their shimmering, golden echo. That gold-woven connection to the stars was a lifeline for any empire of the sea, and no one knew this better than the heirs to the Phoenician legacy. The Carthaginians did not just trade across the Mediterranean, they dominated it, and their celestial knowledge was the silent navigator behind their thalassocracy. Historical whispers, primarily from their Greek rivals, suggest their ambition pushed them beyond the known world. They spoke of sailing past the Pillars of Hercules, the gateway we call the Strait of Gibraltar, and venturing into the terrifying expanse of the Atlantic. To make such a voyage and hope to return, the stars were their only reliable map. While the Phoenicians perfected coastal navigation using the North Star, an Atlantic journey required deeper knowledge. They would have needed to understand the shifting patterns of constellations as they moved further south, recognizing new guide stars as Polaris dipped toward the horizon. Some accounts even suggest Carthaginian explorers used the seasonal appearance of certain stars to gauge latitude, allowing them to sail along a parallel, perhaps reaching as far as the coast of West Africa or the British Isles for tin. This was high-stakes astronomy, where a misreading of the heavens meant a fleet vanished forever into the ocean's void. Back on land, their relationship with the cosmos took a darker, more enigmatic turn. At the heart of their city stood the Tophet, a sacred precinct unlike any other in the ancient world. Here, thousands of small stone markers were erected over urns containing the cremated remains of infants and animals. The prevailing interpretation is that these were offerings to the gods Baal Hammon and Tanit, a profound and disturbing ritual of sacrifice, but look at the stelae themselves. Many are carved with symbolic imagery, including the crescent moon and sun disk, often combined into a single symbol representing the goddess Tanit. This recurring motif is a direct invocation of celestial bodies. The ritual timing of these sacrifices may have been tied to specific astronomical events, such as the new moon, a solar eclipse, or the appearance of an ominous planet like Mars. In a society where the gods were believed to dwell in the heavens, offering the most precious gift during a moment of celestial power was a brutal attempt to secure divine favor for the state, for the harvest, or for victory in war. Their astronomical practices, however, are now a ghost in the historical record, and for that we can blame their most famous rival. The Punic Wars with Rome were a fight for survival, a century-long conflict of unimaginable bitterness. When Rome finally achieved total victory in 146 before the Common Era, their wrath was absolute. the city of Carthage was systematically destroyed, its buildings razed, its earth salted in legend, and its libraries burned. The Romans were meticulous record keepers, but they had no interest in preserving the knowledge of a civilization they aimed to erase from history. Every star log, every navigational manual, every priestly text on celestial omens likely went up in flames. What little we know comes from Greek and Roman sources who are often hostile or dismissive, leaving the sophisticated celestial science of the Carthaginians forever shrouded in mystery. We are left with silent stelae carved with moon symbols and tales of ships sailing by starlight into the great unknown, a haunting reminder of how much knowledge can be lost when an empire is determined to blot another out of existence. Across the Atlantic, where the Carthaginian libraries burned, a different kind of knowledge was being raised from the earth itself. In the fertile floodplain where the Mississippi and Missouri rivers meet, a city of astonishing scale once pulsed with life. Cahokia, the great metropolis of the Mississippian culture, was a carefully orchestrated world where the sun did not just rise, it was summoned to order the day. At its heart stood Monk's Mound, a colossal earthen pyramid covering 14 acres at its base and rising 100 feet into the air. From its flat summit, a priest or ruler could look out over a city of 20,000 people, more populous than London at the time, and see a landscape meticulously designed to capture the light. But the true genius of their celestial engineering lay not in that single mound, but in a circle of cedar posts to the west, a structure archaeologists call Woodhenge. Reconstructed from the patterns of ancient post holes, this was not a permanent stone circle, but a living, renewable observatory. The posts were likely replaced as they weathered, a ritual of renewal that mirrored the cycles they tracked. At its center, an observer would watch the sun rise on the equinoxes directly over a marker post, splitting the world into equal day and night. On the summer solstice, the sun would crest the horizon aligned with another post, and on the winter solstice, yet another. This was a precise, functional solar calendar carved from wood and shadow. For a society whose survival depended on maize agriculture, knowing the exact moment to plant after the last frost was everything. Woodhenge gave them that date with certainty, transforming celestial observation into food security and social stability. Yet this alignment served a purpose far deeper than agriculture. The sun's path was sacred drama. On the equinox, as the sun rose perfectly aligned, its rays would have shot across the plaza, perhaps illuminating the front of Monk's Mound or a central temple. This spectacle would have gathered the entire community, uniting them in a visible contract with the cosmos, a public demonstration that the rulers and priests could commune with the forces that governed time itself. Their cosmology was etched into every ceremonial object they crafted. This is the world of the Southern Cult or Southeastern Ceremonial Complex, a collection of symbols spread across Mississippian sites. Look at a repoussé copper plate depicting the birdman, a figure part human, part falcon, often shown with a mace in one hand and a severed head in the other. He stands on a cross-in-circle motif, a symbol that almost certainly represents the sun and the four cardinal directions. This was not random art, it was a statement of cosmic authority. The birdman is believed to represent a celestial deity or a deified ruler who could travel between worlds, his connection to the sun granting him the power of life, death, and renewal. Shell gorgets carved with spider webs, weeping eyes, and hand and eye motifs tell a story of a universe layered like their flat-topped mounds, an underworld, a middle world of humans, and an upper world of celestial powers. The rulers of Cahokia, by aligning their city to the sun's journey and adorning themselves with these symbols, were physically embodying that connection. They became the axis mundi, the living link between the fertile earth and the orderly sky, their right to rule proven every equinox when the sun obeyed the posts their ancestors had placed. When the city was abandoned centuries later, the mounds remained silent earthen testimony to a vision of power written not in words, but in the alignment of wood, earth, and the unwavering path of the sun. The sun-scorched sands of southern Arabia hold the memory of a kingdom built on perfume and prayer. The Sabaeans, rulers of the legendary kingdom of Sheba, mastered a land of brutal extremes, and their survival depended on reading the sky with a precision born of desperation. Their wealth flowed from the fragrant resins of frankincense and myrrh, but their power was anchored by a monumental feat of engineering, the Great Dam of Marib. This massive earthen structure, with its complex sluice gates and canals, tamed the sporadic, violent floods of the Wadi, turning the desert into a fertile oasis. To manage this system, they needed to know exactly when the life-giving but destructive monsoon rains would arrive from the Indian Ocean. This is where the stars entered the equation as a practical tool. While no explicit star charts survive, it is almost certain that Sabaean hydrologists used the heliacal rising of key stars, just as the Egyptians used Sirius to predict the coming of the seasonal rains. The appearance of a specific constellation on the eastern horizon just before dawn would have been their annual alarm clock, signaling the time to prepare the dam's gates and clear the irrigation channels. Their calendar, essential for this work, was a lunisolar system, but its accuracy in marking the solar year for agriculture hints at sophisticated solar observations likely conducted from their temples. And those temples tell a different, more spiritual side of the story. Dedicated primarily to Olmaka, the supreme god of the Sabaean pantheon, these structures were often associated with the moon. Olmaka was not merely a lunar deity, he was a god of irrigation and vitality, a direct link between the celestial cycle and the water that sustained life. The famous Awam temple, also known as the Maram Bilqis, shows alignments that some researchers believe could be lunar, perhaps marking the moon's extreme standstills. This connection makes profound sense. In a desert kingdom, the cool, nocturnal light of the moon governed the rhythms of nighttime travel and ritual, while its phases offered a reliable, shorter timekeeping cycle than the sun. Their entire cosmology seems to have been an astral one. Other deities like the goddess Shams personified the sun, and the planet Venus was also venerated. This deep astral theology, where gods were not simply in the sky but were the sky, infused their famed trade. The Queen of Sheba's journey to Solomon, as recounted in tradition, was not just a diplomatic mission, but a convergence of wisdoms where the celestial knowledge of the desert met the burgeoning wisdom of Jerusalem. The Sabaeans encoded their understanding in the very alignment of their temples and the timing of their water, leaving behind a legacy where the stars dictated the flow of both incense and life itself through the heart of the Arabian desert. Before Rome ever laid its first stone, another people held the keys to the sky. The Etruscans, a sophisticated and enigmatic culture of ancient Italy, believed the cosmos was not just a spectacle, but a divine text written in lightning, in the flight of birds, and in the precise arrangement of the stars. Their entire religious system was built on one principle, that the will of the gods was broadcast through the natural world, and that with the right knowledge you could read it. This practice was called haruspicy, and it was a science of signs. Among the most sacred duties of an Etruscan priest, or haruspex, was to read the future in the livers of sacrificed animals. This might sound bizarre to us, but to them it was a direct microcosm of the heavens. The proof is a single, astonishing artifact, the bronze liver of Piacenza. Discovered in a field in 1877, this life-sized model of a sheep's liver is not a medical tool. It is a map. Its surface is divided into 44 regions, each meticulously inscribed with the names of Etruscan gods. This was a training manual for priests, a physical reference chart. The belief was that the liver, as the seat of life, reflected the cosmic order at the moment of sacrifice. By examining the markings, color, and shape of a real liver, the haruspex could see which celestial region, and thus which deity, was influencing events on Earth. The bronze model organized these divine territories just as the Etruscans organized the sky itself into a celestial grid governed by specific powers. This was divination as a precise, almost bureaucratic act of celestial cartography, but their sky reading went far beyond entrails. They watched for the fulgurator, the divine flash of lightning. The Etruscans had an entire doctrine for interpreting lightning bolts, noting the part of the sky from which they originated, their color, and the direction they traveled. A bolt from the northwest, for instance, might carry a very different message from one in the southeast, each quadrant ruled by a different god. They observed the tripudium, the sacred dance, which referred to the pattern of how sacred chickens ate their grain, a practice the Romans later adopted for their own military campaigns. And they studied the flights of birds, noting their species, their number, and the path they cut across the sky, believing birds were messengers traveling between the realms of gods and men. All of these signs, from a lightning strike to a single hawk circling, were pieces of a vast, ongoing celestial conversation. For the Etruscans, there was no separation between astronomy, religion, and statecraft. Before a king made a decision, before a city was founded, before an army marched, the sky had to be consulted. The universe was speaking, and it was the duty of the learned to translate its pronouncements. This profound worldview did not vanish when Etruscan political power faded. It was absorbed lock, stock, and barrel by their conquerors. The rising Roman Republic, pragmatic and ambitious, saw the immense value in this system. They adopted Etruscan haruspicy into their own state religion, creating the College of Augurs. A Roman augur did not predict the future in a crystal ball. He determined whether the gods approved or disapproved of a proposed action by reading the same signs, the flight of birds, the pattern of lightning, the behavior of sacred animals. The very word inauguration comes from this practice, the rite of taking the auguries before a leader assumed office. When a Roman general stood on the Capitoline Hill, marking out a sacred space in the sky with his curved staff, the litus, and watched for birds, he was performing a ritual directly inherited from Etruscan sky watchers. The Etruscans gave Rome the conceptual framework that the gods communicated through a coded language written in the heavens and in nature. They provided the tools to decipher it, turning the chaotic events of the world into a legible divine narrative. So, while the Romans would later build an empire of roads and laws, its spiritual and celestial foundation was laid by the Etruscans, a people who taught a future superpower how to listen to the whispers of the sky. The Etruscan bronze liver mapped the sky for the living, but across the world, another culture painted the heavens to guide the dead. In the cold, silent darkness of a mountain tomb in ancient Korea, the ceiling explodes with color and light. This is the legacy of the Goguryeo kingdom, a formidable power that ruled the northern Korean peninsula and Manchuria for nearly 7 centuries. Their royal tombs, sealed for over 1,000 years, contain not just treasures but entire cosmologies painted in brilliant mineral pigments. The most spectacular of these are the intricate star charts adorning the ceilings, some of the oldest and most complete celestial maps ever discovered in East Asia. They are not random dots of white paint. Look closely at the ceiling of the Tomb of the Four Spirits, for example. You will see a complex diagram where the heavens are divided into sections. At the very center, the Northern Dipper, the Big Dipper we know, is prominently featured, its 7 stars connected by bold lines. Radiating outward from this central pivot are other constellations, each carefully placed. The Sun, a red disk with a 3-legged crow inside, and the Moon, a white sphere holding a rabbit pounding elixir in a mortar, are positioned in their celestial realms. This is a functional map of the night sky as the Goguryeo people understood it, frozen in time to serve a profound spiritual purpose. These tombs were not merely burial chambers, they were vehicles for eternity. The belief was that the soul of the deceased king or noble embarked on a perilous journey to the afterlife. The painted ceiling served as a literal roadmap for that journey. By looking up at these familiar constellations, the soul could orient itself in the spirit world, navigating by the same celestial markers that had guided them in life. The prominent Northern Dipper, in particular, was seen as the celestial chariot of the supreme deity, the axis around which the heavens turned. Following its pointer stars could lead the soul to its proper resting place among the immortals. This celestial cartography reveals a fascinating cultural synthesis. The very structure of the star charts, with their division into celestial palaces and the use of specific Chinese constellation names and myths, like the Sun Crow and the Moon Rabbit, shows a deep absorption of Chinese astronomical systems, which were the most advanced in the region. Goguryeo maintained complex relations with its Chinese neighbors, trading, warring, and exchanging ideas. The adoption of this formal, bureaucratic sky map was a sign of sophistication, a way to participate in the broader East Asian world of learning. But the spirit within the map is uniquely Korean. The vibrant, dynamic style of painting, the inclusion of Korean mythical beasts like the blue dragon and white tiger as directional guardians, and the overall shamanistic world point to an indigenous foundation. In Korean shamanism, the shaman acts as a mediator who can travel between the world of the living, the underworld, and the heavenly realm. The tomb itself, with its starry ceiling, becomes a permanent, fixed version of that shamanic journey. It suggests that the deceased king, in death, attained the ultimate shamanic power, the ability to ascend and take his place among the stars. The paintings are a bridge, merging the precise, imported science of Chinese star catalogues with the ancient, animistic soul of the Korean peninsula. They tell us that for the Goguryeo, to know the stars was to possess the ultimate knowledge, a knowledge that could conquer even death by providing a constellation-lit path home. Buried beneath the blistering sands of the Libyan desert lies a forgotten network of life. The Garamontes did not merely survive in the Sahara, they thrived, building a kingdom of fortified towns and lush oases in a land that receives less than an inch of rain each year. Their secret was not magic, but a profound understanding of the earth and the sky, harnessed through one of history's most ingenious inventions. They mastered the Fagara, a system of underground tunnels that tapped into ancient fossil water trapped deep beneath the desert floor. These were not simple wells, but miles-long, gently sloping channels that used gravity to guide precious water to the surface without a single drop evaporating in the scorching sun. Maintaining this subterranean web was a monumental, continuous task, requiring precise coordination and, crucially, precise timing. This is where the stars entered their world as a practical necessity. To know when to send crews to clear silt from the tunnels, when to plant date palms in the oasis gardens, and most importantly, when to dispatch their famed chariots and camel caravans across the void, they needed a reliable calendar. In a landscape without rivers or monsoons, the only dependable markers were the lights in the night sky. The heliacal rising of a bright star like Sirius or the shifting position of familiar constellations would have told them the season was turning, signaling that the cooler, less lethal nights for travel were approaching or that the date harvest was near. Their survival was a scheduled affair dictated by celestial rhythms. Could this deep timekeeping have been etched into their very architecture? The Garamontes left behind thousands of pyramidal and tower-like tombs and fortified settlements like their capital, Garama. While systematic archaeoastronomical studies here are still in early stages, the potential is tantalizing. Some researchers examining the orientation of these tombs note that many are aligned along an east-west axis. This could be a simple funerary tradition linking the deceased to the path of the sun. But in a culture so dependent on solar cycles for survival, it might also reflect a deliberate celestial alignment, perhaps to catch the first light of dawn on a significant day, connecting the journey of the dead to the daily rebirth of the sun. Their fortified settlements, positioned on rocky outcrops for defense, also offered unobstructed views of the horizon in every direction, perfect for watching the stars appear and disappear. They were the ultimate unsung astronomers, not building stone circles to ponder the cosmos, but reading the sky to literally pull water from stone and navigate a sea of sand. Their celestial knowledge was the invisible engine of their civilization, the silent partner to their engineering genius, allowing them to write a chapter of human triumph in the most unlikely place on Earth. But the desert is a static sea, its dunes frozen in time. To navigate a true ocean, one that moves and breathes with a life of its own, required a celestial science of breathtaking fluidity. Across the vast Pacific, a realm of blue covering nearly a third of our planet, the Polynesian voyagers performed a miracle. With no compasses, no sextants, and no written charts, they discovered and settled thousands of islands scattered like dust across an empty horizon. Their vessel was the double-hulled canoe, their engine the wind, and their map was the living sky. They did not simply follow stars, they built a mental model of the entire cosmos rotating around their canoe. This was the star compass, not a physical object but a conceptual masterpiece. A master navigator, the Kahuna Ho'okul, would memorize the precise points on the horizon where hundreds of specific stars would rise and set. He would picture the canoe as stationary, with the celestial dome turning around it. If he kept the rising point of the star called Hokupa, our Polaris, directly off the stern, he was sailing due south. If he aimed the prow at the rising point of our Sirius, he was on a course to the distant Marquesas. Each star was a spoke in this invisible mental wheel, a bearing that remained true long after that star had set and another had risen to take its place. This knowledge was an oral encyclopedia, passed from elder to apprentice in chants and stories over years of rigorous training. It was a living library carried in a single human mind. Yet the stars were only one layer of their navigation. They read the ocean itself as a text, long, rolling swells generated by distant weather systems or trade winds create steady patterns in the open sea. A skilled navigator could lie in the hull of his canoe and feel these swells through his body, sensing their direction even on a moonless night or when clouds obscured the sky. A change in the rhythm meant a shift in the wind or the distant presence of an island disrupting the ocean's pulse. They watched the clouds, noting how puffy cumulus clouds often cluster over the warm land of an unseen island, or how their undersides might glow green from the reflection of a shallow lagoon. And they observed the flight of birds with an ornithologist's precision. The Manu Oku, the white tern, flies out to sea each morning to fish but must return to land each night to nest. Spotting these birds at dusk and noting the direction they flew told a navigator that land lay within a radius of about 120 miles and exactly which way to steer as darkness fell. This was wayfinding, a holistic art that wove together celestial observation, oceanography, meteorology, and biology into a single, sustainable practice. It was a dialogue with the environment where every wave, every bird, every star was a word in a sentence pointing the way home. Their voyages were not accidental drifts, but intentional, round-trip explorations spanning thousands of miles. They carried families, livestock, and the sacred plants of their culture in their canoes, a complete ecosystem in motion. To settle a new island was to place a new star in their mental map, to name a new swell pattern, to learn the habits of its birds. This profound tradition, nearly lost to colonization and the rise of modern instruments, is now experiencing a powerful renaissance. In the 1970s, the voyaging canoe Hokula was built using traditional designs and under the guidance of master navigator Maupiailug from Micronesia, sailed from Hawaii to Tahiti without instruments, proving the ancient stories were not myth but documented history. The Polynesian navigators teach us that the greatest journeys are not made by conquering nature, but by learning to listen to it, to become part of its rhythm until the ocean itself becomes a familiar road, paved with starlight and sung into memory. The Polynesian star compass was a living memory, but in the heart of a sprawling terrestrial empire, the sky became a matter of law, order, and punctuality. The Romans built their world on concrete and administration, and they demanded the same reliability from the cosmos. Their greatest celestial achievement was not a new theory, but a new calendar, a bureaucratic instrument that would shape Western timekeeping for over 16 centuries. By the 1st century before the Common Era, the old Roman calendar, a messy lunar system, had fallen nearly 3 months out of sync with the seasons. Harvest festivals were occurring in winter, and the political year was in chaos. Julius Caesar, fresh from his campaigns in Egypt, saw the solution. In Alexandria, he consulted with the astronomer Sosigenes and witnessed the elegance and precision of the Egyptian solar calendar. He brought that knowledge home. In 45 before the Common Era, Caesar decreed a radical reform, creating the Julian calendar. It was a pure solar year of 365 days, with a leap day added every 4 years. For the first time, the Roman state divorced its civil timekeeping from the unreliable moon and anchored it firmly to the sun. This was not done for farmers, but for tax collectors, for census takers, for generals moving legions. A predictable calendar meant a governable empire. To mark this new order in the very fabric of the city, they built monuments to solar time. The most spectacular was the Solarium Augusti, a giant sundial erected by Augustus in the Campus Martius. Its pointer was a 100-foot red granite obelisk taken from Egypt as a trophy. Its face was a vast pavement of travertine and bronze, marked with lines for the hours, days, and zodiac signs. On the emperor's birthday, the shadow of the obelisk would point directly to the Aura Passus, the altar of peace, linking his personal destiny to the solar cycle and the peace he brought to Rome. This was astronomy as public spectacle and political propaganda, turning sunlight into a civic broadcast, but the Roman relationship with the heavens ran deeper than clocks and calendars. They were spiritual pragmatists. They absorbed the complex Greek models of crystal spheres and wandering planets, but they filtered this science through the lens of state religion. They inherited the Etruscan art of reading divine will in natural signs, and they formalized it. The College of Augurs was a powerful political body. Before any major public action, an augur would take the auspices, marking out a sacred space in the sky and watching for the flight patterns of birds. A flock splitting in a certain way could postpone an election or delay a battle. This was not superstition, it was a constitutional check, a way to seek divine validation for human decisions and to ensure no single magistrate acted against the will of the gods. The stars and planets were woven into this fabric of power. Celestial omens, especially comets and eclipses, were state business. When a comet appeared after Caesar's assassination, Augustus proclaimed it was the soul of his adopted father ascending to become a god, the Sidus Iulium or Julian star. This transformed a celestial accident into a potent tool for legitimizing his new dynasty. For the Romans, the sky was a ledger of divine favor, a clock for running an empire, and a screen upon which to project their own authority. They took the celestial knowledge of the Egyptians, the Greeks, and the Etruscans, and they stamped it with a uniquely Roman seal, organizing the heavens into a system as disciplined and far-reaching as their roads. From the stargazers of Sumer to the star pathfinders of Polynesia, we have traced a single, shimmering thread across 30 civilizations. Each one, in its own language of stone, clay, and story, told us the same profound truth. The night sky was never a cold, empty void. It was a living map for sailors lost on the desert or the deep ocean. It was a divine clock that told farmers when to plant and kings when to rule. It was a sacred scripture written in points of light, containing the laws of gods and the fate of humanity. They did not merely observe the cosmos, they conversed with it, built their worlds in its image, and sought their immortality within its cycles. That conversation echoes all around us, even now. Our 7-day week finds its roots in the 7 wandering planets of Babylon. The names of our months and our zodiac signs are gifts from Rome and Mesopotamia. When we mark New Year's on January 1st, we follow the calendar of Julius Caesar. When a sailor uses the North Star, they employ a technique perfected by Phoenician merchants 3,000 years ago. The very act of predicting an eclipse rests on cycles first recorded by Chinese diviners on oracle bones. Their legacy is not locked away in ruins, it is woven into the fabric of our daily time, our language, and our orientation on this planet. This journey reveals something even deeper than historical fact. It shows that looking up and wondering, that desperate, beautiful need to find pattern and meaning in the stars, is one of the most fundamentally human things we can do. It is an impulse that connects a Sumerian priest watching Venus to a child today pointing at the Big Dipper for the first time. We are all inheritors of that ancient shared gaze. If this cosmic tour across continents and millennia has sparked your imagination, if it made you see the stars a little differently, let me know. Hit that like button, subscribe for more journeys into the mysteries of our past, and tell me down in the comments which civilization's connection to the stars amazed you the most. Was it the Maya who scheduled their rituals on a celestial calendar of terrifying precision? Or the Polynesians who navigated an ocean by feeling swells and memorizing star paths? I would love to hear what captured your curiosity. Until next time, keep looking up. The oldest storybook is still there, waiting above us every